Coming up, all it takes is the swipe of a phone, the unique technology keeping kids safe at sports. And we fall back this weekend, but are we really gaining more sleep? Our expert reveals its drawbacks and the controversy surrounding doing away with it for good. Good morning. It's Friday, November 4th. I'm Jessica Lovell, and we are live inside the Dolph C. Simons Jr. Family Broadcast Studio. If you play sports or you follow professional teams, you know that concussions continue to be a growing concern. The CDC reports blows to the head are common, with close to 7% of American kids showing signs of a brain injury at some point in their childhood. This morning, we show you the app that tracks your child's safety in just minutes. So make sure you get your questions sent in to us on the links here on your screen, or go ahead and drop them in the chat thread below. We'll get to those in just a bit. The fight over daylight savings time has been going on for over 100 years. The question being, is it necessary? A 2020 study by the National Institutes of Health found that around 150,000 Americans experienced physical health problems thanks to that biannual time change. These include strokes, heart attacks, accidents, and mood changes. Daylight saving time always ends the first Sunday of November at 2 a.m. in the morning. That's when you need to move your clocks back an hour. Now, earlier this year, the Senate unanimously passed legislation to make daylight saving time permanent. Now, it still needs to pass the House and be signed by President Biden before fully approved. So let's bring in our sleep specialist, Dr. Luthra. Good morning. How are you today?
Hi, good morning. I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Always love to get your good sleep insight. So just what do you think about making daylight saving permanent? What's your take on this debate?
So I think the debate comes from the fact that the Senate had passed it earlier this year, and their argument is that daylight saving times provide more light in the evening hours. And that can be good for people enjoying more evening time outside, good for businesses. People consume more if they have more light in the evening, so they shop more, they do more things outside. So from a business standpoint and from a standpoint of adults enjoying more social activity in the evening hours, the debate is that the daylight saving times should exist, and some argue that it should be made permanent. But from the health standpoint, this is not a good idea. And American Academy of Sleep Medicine has already given a position statement that they would prefer a permanent standard time. So there are two arguments basically. Number one is we do not want time shift. And the second argument is we want to keep the permanent standard time because when in March the time moves forward, you are basically losing an hour of sleep. And a lot of studies have shown that the incidence of heart attack goes up, in some cases up to 24%. Incidence of stroke can go up by 8%, changes in mood, depression, and very importantly, adolescents in which the secretion of melatonin in the brain is changing and they are more prone to excess light in the evening, they can develop delayed circadian problems. So they tend to sleep later, be sleepy in the morning. Combine that with the fact that they're going schools in darkness, impacts their school performance, school alertness, can also increase incidence of accidents in the morning when you're going out in dark. So for all those health-related reasons, the argument is that not only we should remove these changes in clock biannually, but also move towards permanent standard time because it aligns more with the natural sunrise and natural sunset, which is what body responds to.
So are we really gaining more sleep? I mean, you say all these negative effects, and it's like just from 1 hour difference. That's hard to believe, but I believe you. Are we really getting that extra hour of sleep, or does it just feel like it for that one day?
For one day, you really don't gain more sleep because brain's circadian clocks are designed in a way that they're very precise. So for example, if your clock is right now between 10 and 6, that's when the brain is accepting sleep, and at 6 o'clock it will stop accepting sleep. So even if you stay in bed longer, you're not going to feel more rested or gain more sleep. On the other hand, in the spring, when you move the clocks later and you lose an hour, your brain will have the impact of 1 hour sleep loss, which sounds minimal, but it can be profound because it alters your endocrine balance. It alters your cardiovascular health to the point of increased heart attack incidences to 24%.
And just before I let you go, Dr. Luthra, I know you are deep into sleep research. What are you finding out? What's new?
So I think, in terms of sleep, we are doing a lot of work on orexin, which is the wake-promoting hormone, which I think is the new thing in the sleep medicine field. The scientist who discovered it, Emmanuel Mignot, recently was awarded a prestigious scientific award even. And we are now finding that orexin hormone can be related to your cardiovascular health, endocrine health, could lead to hyperlipidemias in addition to causing either insomnias or excessive sleep. So I think research on the front of orexin is really what we are looking forward to in the field of sleep medicine.
Dr. Luthra, always good to see you. Appreciate your insight.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend. Turning now to kids, student athletes, and concussion. A study published by the American Academy of Pediatrics looked at nearly 10,000 reported concussions across 20 different high school sports. It found football had the highest concussion rate, followed by girls soccer and then boys ice hockey. But now there's a unique way to keep a closer eye on the health and well-being of our student athletes. It's called SWAY. It's a baseline balance and cognitive tests to help determine whether a student athlete has a concussion or doesn't, and whether it's safe or not to play, or if should they sit out the game. Joining us in studio this morning is Medical Director of Youth Sports Medicine, Dr. David Smith. He also serves as the member of the Kansas State High School Activities Association Sports Medicine Advisory Committee, so he knows his stuff. That's why you're with us today. Always good to see you.
Thank you, Jessica. It's good to be here.
We are also live at Blue Valley North High School with Doug Wiesner, Youth Sports Medicine Program Director. We've got Miles Wilcox, who is the athletic trainer for Blue Valley North High School. And we're also joined by football player Will Van Zon, who is going to let us test him out this morning. So welcome to all three of you gentlemen. Dr. Smith, though, I want to start with you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Dr. Smith, I do want to start with you. Just because you serve on this committee, have there been any changes when it comes to concussion protocol? I mean, we know that the NFL recently changed their protocols due to concussion, but will that change cause any changes for our student athletes?
You know, Jessica, we always learn from our experts at the NFL who continue to study concussion and head injuries and other catastrophic injuries. And there's nothing new with our youth sports medicine or our Kansas State High School Athletic Association guidelines, except for being as accurate as we can with reporting data, how many concussions are being seen throughout the state of Kansas. So that's number one. Obviously, prevention, you know, teaching youth how to tackle properly and not to use the head as a weapon. Obviously, good helmets continue to be out there, and replacing helmets at the high school level is very important. And then, of course, the Guardian cap, which we talked about, is a soft shell that is now can be put on the helmet and help reduce some of the impact force to the brain. The NFL this year mandated it at training camp for linemen, tight ends, and linebackers, and some of their data have showed that there can be up to a 10% reduction in individual brain impact. And yet, if two football players have the Guardian cap on, perhaps a 20% reduction in the force to the brain. The data that the company that makes this shell says up to 33% reduction in impact to the brain. So the Guardian cap has been accepted, I mean, all the way down. In fact, some of the collegiate level, they're using it. The high school level, I started to see that. And so we encourage its use. It's not mandated. It can be costly for some schools that don't have a big budget. But it is something I would say that we as an advisory committee say it's certainly fine.
Yeah,
it's
a good positive change there on the professional level. Last year, Kasha reported there were close to 1,100 reported concussions in Kansas. But if you look at the 2018-2019 school year, there were double the concussions. So why do you think there was such a drop from then to now?
Well, and we follow this data, and like I say, remember, data is only as good as what's reported.
The reporting,
and
right.
So what happened, you see that data is pre-COVID. During COVID, the participation rate in contact and collision sports went down. Some games were canceled. The season was basically reduced. So obviously we'd expect a reduction in concussion. As we've ramped back up to full contact and collision sports, including football and soccer, and of course we don't have ice hockey in the state of Kansas as a sanctioned sport, but as a club sport, we are seeing in the clinic, we're seeing more concussion. The data hasn't shown it, but at our recent Sports Medicine Advisory Committee, we talked about that, and I think a lot of that's just reporting. We have to get better at reporting. It's actually, Kansas State High School Athletic Association has said they want all schools to report their concussion for any sanctioned sport. And yet some schools don't have athletic trainers, and so maybe a coach is asked to do this, or a faculty member, and so we're trying to get better at that reporting data. So I think that those numbers are flawlessly low, and that if we get better at reporting, we're going to see that they're going to come right back up. The NFL, of course, reports their data each year, and they'll see reductions, and then maybe a steady, and then a little reduction. And obviously our goal is to continue to reduce it. But in a sport like football, hockey, soccer, and actually one that they didn't mention in that AAP study is cheer. Per participation rate, the head and neck injury is highest.
You always
cheer.
mention that, yeah.
Yeah, and so we don't want to forget that, and yet every sport is potentially at risk for concussion.
All right, let's head out to Blue Valley North High School. Doug, good morning. Tell us about SWAY, what it stands for, and of course how it works.
Well, it doesn't stand for anything. It's not an acronym for anything. So I think SWAY is just it's a sign or a symptom of concussion, and so I think that they wanted to marry that up with their name brand, and so I think that that's how they came up with SWAY. I'm not really sure, but as far as how it works, Miles has done hundreds of these, and so I'm going to let him tell you how it works a little bit more than me.
So the way SWAY works is it can be utilized in the athletic training room for baseline testing. It can be utilized on the sideline for post-injury testing. It can be used in the clinic. And really all you have to do is the provider creates a code, sends a code to the athlete, and the athlete can download the application on their phone, punch in that code, and then do the test that we've already set up for them to do. And so it's super convenient. Like I said, you can do it anywhere. Not very many tools required. And what's really great is it takes kind of the subjectivity out of assessing a concussion, and it puts more objectivity into it. So it uses basically the technology in your phone to monitor multiple things, being balance, impulse control, reaction, memory, and a couple others.
All right, our cell phones and apps being used for the good. So, Miles, what about SWAY has changed concussion management for you and the other trainers?
Yeah, it's been a one-stop shop, which is nice. In the past, kid gets hurt, we do our assessment, we use pen and paper to monitor, to track. You know, you have to set up a time to call the student athlete on a Saturday and Sunday if the injury occurs on a Friday. Whereas now, like I said, I create a code, I say, hey, Will, Saturday morning, Sunday morning, punch in this code, let me know how you're doing, how you're feeling, follow up with me on Monday. And what's even better about this is I can shoot Dr. Smith a text if he was my sideline physician or if he's the supervising physician and say, hey, do you mind taking a peek at Will's SWAY and just give us your thoughts? And then from there, Dr. Smith can give us his 2 cents, say, hey, yeah, bring him into the clinic for a closer look at it, or he can tell us to just keep an eye on him.
I want you to put Will to the test here in just a moment, but Dr. Smith, how great has this been for you being able to be right there?
We implemented it this year, and it has been, in my opinion, very helpful. What Miles just said is great. I don't have to bring the athlete in as often into the clinic to see them. And number one, I have a professional and excellent athletic trainer out there in Miles and throughout our contracted schools who can assess them, ask them how they're doing. This isn't just a go-to test that we rely on 100%. Right. But Miles looks at them, he does the test. I have it on my cell phone. I pull up, I can look at any athlete that I've ever worked with or any of the schools that were contracted, and I can look over their SWAY test, and I can give Miles some input. Hey, it looks like he's doing better, but he's not back to baseline. Therefore, let's let him exercise a little bit more and keep track of him in school, at home, and use those results. And so I don't have to say, well, I probably better get him in the clinic and see how he's doing. But I can determine determine then the follow-up. I may not even have to see him back in the clinic if things are going really well, because this test has been so useful.
I can't think of what a peace of mind that is, not just for the trainers, but for parents too.
Yeah, no, it's great.
For their kids.
Yeah.
Okay, so Will, good morning to you. Just first tell us, what do you play? What's your position? How long you been doing it?
So I play football, and I play right tackle, which is on the O-line, and I've been doing it since my freshman year, and I'm a junior now, so I'd say about 3 years.
Good. Well, thanks for being with us today. Okay, Miles, I'm going to let you test Will. Let's see how it goes.
Okay, so this has kind of already been set up. I already sent Will a code, and literally all he does, the app is already downloaded from when we did baseline testing this summer, opens the app, punches in this 5 or 6 digit code, and then this is a screen that appears. And so then, as you can see, he's already done his symptoms, so we can jump right into the balance testing. But there is a couple others like inspection time, reaction time, impulse control, and memory. Each test takes a couple minutes, right? So it's really quick and convenient. So Will's going to go ahead and start the balance testing. He's got a couple pages where it just tells him, hey, here's what you need to do. Here's how you're going to perform the test. So for balance testing specifically, it's going to go ahead and start. For balance testing specifically, he's going to do feet together, eyes closed, and he's going to hold that position. And the application is going to ding to tell him when to start and when to stop. And then as we move on, he'll do eyes closed, single leg on his right, eyes closed, single leg on his left. He'll even go into eyes closed tandem stance. So just on this one balance testing alone, he's being evaluated in 5, 6 different components. And like I said, it's using the technology in the phone to monitor how he's doing, how he's moving. There are a couple others with memory where it's going to pop a couple things up and challenge him to memorize some things. There's another one with reaction time where he's going to look at his phone and it's going to show one color, and then the instructions say when it changes colors, you need to respond and react. But every now and then the test might try and trick you. So it gives us a very good objective measurement. Now, when he's completed with this test, I can pull up his results and I can see on a graph how he does compared to his baseline, and then I can also see how he does compared to his gender and his age. So it really, really takes a lot, like I said, a lot of the subjectivity out of it, and it allows me to objectively measure how he's doing, whether or not he's being honest with me or not.
Hey, Miles, before we get to Dr. Hawkinson for our COVID count today, how are you? What were you doing before Sway? How would you be on the sidelines testing for concussion? What was the protocol then?
Yeah, so it's everything we learned in school. So going from the symptom questionnaire, if we want to have a piece of paper to help kind of monitor that, or if we can just memorize, there's 22, 23 different symptoms, if we can just memorize and ask him those questions. Everything from retrograde amnesia to anterograde amnesia. Hey, what do you remember before the events? What can you remember after the events? You know, I would even have them stand on the sideline and I would count in my head, you know, the number of errors he scores. So from a sideline evaluation perspective, it puts it all on your phone, which is nice, which is convenient. I don't have to sit there and write notes down while I'm evaluating him or hope to remember everything. Because the chaos of a sideline can be crazy when there's a big touchdown or a big interception and you got kids running in and around you. So it really makes organization really helpful.
And Dr. Smith, yeah, we talk about this is a tool.
Yeah, it's a tool, and sometimes we don't use it right on the sideline. So if the fans are looking down and they see me down there, I'm not using the Sway right then. I'll do some of the basics of the exam if we can, maybe at halftime or a time where we can take them back in a quiet setting and do it, because it does take a focused athlete. They can't have distractions, and that's where we see some of the errors with the baseline even. If they get interrupted in the middle of the test, it can throw off the test. So we have to be careful, like any test we do. It's a test that's not perfect. It's information for us that we combine with what they might report to us and other things.
A good evaluation after you see that report.
Exactly.
All right, guys, hang tight. I want to put a QR code up on our screen right now. It'll take you to more information and more resources for concussion here at the health system. So hover over that, check that link out. But right now, let's get to Dr. Dana Hawkinson, Medical Director of Infection Prevention and Control, joining us virtually this morning with several counts, Doc Hawk, because as we know, it's not just COVID, it's flu, it's RSV. How are we looking? And let's start with COVID as usual.
Yeah, right now in the hospital, we have 21 active infections with 4 in the ICU, 0 on the ventilator, which is always good, and 21 in that recovery period. So unfortunately, we just haven't reached that nadir that we reached, earlier in this pandemic, where we had, I think, two cases, and at one point we're still kind of hovering in that high teens, low 20s. Hopefully not going to be increasing, but we're certainly always monitoring for that.
Yeah, as people are getting sick, they're not just getting tested for COVID. They're going back to the basics like flu.
Yeah.
And now we've seen this massive increase in RSV, and not in just kids, but also adults.
Yeah.
Let's run those numbers too.
Yeah, so this is a little graph that we have, and I wanted to show this just to show that we are seeing at the bottom of the screen there, it's by weeks, and we can see that just an increase in our percent positive and number of cases. We don't have the numbers in there, but at the bottom of those pink bars, I have numbers in mine. And overall, our testing of numbers has increased, but unfortunately, the percent positive has increased as well. And so the overall numbers have gone up. And the pink or red bars are influenza A, and obviously you can see over the past couple of weeks, we have a small amount of influenza B detected as well. So I think the main theme of this is the infections are increasing. The same thing here, but now we're looking at admissions to the hospital. We know that people have been concerned about how many people do you have in the hospital. And again, at the bottom, you have the weeks. It isn't by days, but it's by weeks. And you can just see from 4 weeks ago, there was a steady trend up overall in the number of admissions for influenza. So that is concerning for sure. And then if we move to RSV, I think we need to be showing this as well. This is the RSV testing. And you can see the numbers at the bottom, but the overall trends are increasing. And then you will see that in blue is pediatrics. The orange or yellow is adults as well. So we are seeing those adults also for our RSV testing. We have one more, and now this is for admissions. And again, rates are increasing. Blue is pediatrics, orange or yellow is adults. But remember, we are an adult hospital for the most part. The vast majority of our patients are adults, so that will skew those numbers. But we have a significant number of pediatrics as well. So overall, our trends, unfortunately, at the health system are consistent with the national trends of just increasing rates, increasing numbers, and of course, hospitalizations.
Doc Hawk, thank you for those numbers, those updates. Let's check and see if we have reporters on the line. All right, let's get to our community questions today. Joellen wants to know, would you please discuss more in depth girls soccer and concussion? That kind of piqued her interest when you said that. Can you go into that more?
Yeah, those studies, the numbers have been fairly consistent over the years that for some reason women's soccer has a higher risk of concussion than men's at the collegiate level and at the high school and lower levels. We don't know exactly why that is. Obviously, we pay attention to that. We look at, is there something that they're doing with their training techniques or the way they participate in soccer differently? But I think it doesn't mean that women should avoid soccer. It's just that be aware there's ways that they can hit their head, heading the ball, going up for a header, and then maybe getting hit by a shoulder. And so helping them realize when you take a hit to the head and you don't feel right, get it checked out. It's not, and it doesn't have to be a hit to the head. I say not every concussion is a blow to the head, and not every blow to the head causes a concussion. You can have a blow to the body that kind of whoops the head, spins it a little bit, and that can cause a concussion. So body-to-body contact can cause that too.
Good point. I like that. Doug, I have a question from you, from Erica. As program director, how are you measuring success of SWAY? How do we measure success with this program? And do we think we'll see it grow more and into other high schools?
Well, measuring success, number one, I would say, is it more efficient for my staff? Miles is out here, one athletic trainer with how many fall?
400 or 500.
400 or 500 student athletes this past fall. He's one person that's doing this. Can he become more efficiently? That's a yes. And then secondly, with our previous product, if we had 200 or 300 of those baseline tests done in a year. That was good for us. We have over 2,000 of these baseline sway tests done in the fall sports season alone. We still have winter and we still have spring. Now, we don't have the monster of football in those two sports seasons, so I don't think we'll do 2,000 each sports season. But will we get to 3,000? Yeah, I think we're going to get to 3,000. So, yes, it has been highly, highly good for us.
Will, I have a question for you. How do coaches talk you through injury and safety concerns with the team? I mean, how important do they make that to you and make you feel comfortable to come forward and talk about injuries? Jenny's just wondering how those conversations happen between the players and how they feel comfortable having those conversations.
Oh, so like preseason, they have signed a bunch of different waivers and stuff like that, so that we acknowledge the risk of the sport, we acknowledge the like the conditions that we're putting ourselves in, and there's actually concussions, like maybe a couple pages, I'd say, of like information about concussions. So they are they do make us very, very aware of like the risks and the things that can happen during football, and they also talk to us through about it. Yeah. And also, our coaches are just. Go ahead.
No, so I mean, do you and the teammates? I mean, is safety number one? Do you feel that way out on the field and among your teammates? Is putting safety first kind of a culture?
Yes, I do believe that putting safety first is like a big thing on the field, I would say.
Good. And Miles, has that changed over time? I think we talk about student athletes feeling comfortable coming and talking, and when they don't feel okay, it's okay to not be okay, as we always say. So how has that changed over time?
I will say the coaches' just awareness of concussions in general has increased, especially with everything that's going on at the NFL level. Coaches have been great, and I can speak for my coaching staff here at Blue Valley North. Like we mentioned, there's many student athletes, and so not every minute of the day am I at football practice. Right. And I have had coaches call me, say, hey, so-and-so took a hit, he doesn't look right. And coaches will pull the kid out. So our coaches are great. They are looking after the well-being of our student athletes, and they are just that extra body to help us assess and keep an eye out for these kids.
And as somebody who has seen this evolve over 40 some odd years, the philosophy has changed tremendously. And I can just tell you that coaches today are much more in tune to what's going on and the preventative measures that they can take for their student athletes. That might not have been so a long time ago, but today, just from somebody who was out doing this back in the 1900s, sometime back then, it has evolved tremendously. And yes, I can tell you firsthand that they're much more in tune to the safety of their student athletes.
Doug, you were alive in the 1900s.
Yes, I was.
I feel you. I get you. I'm just so glad you talked about that, and I want to bring in Dr. Smith because you were alive in the 1900s too,
right? Just
like many of us, and it really has changed. I mean, they're students first, they're kids first, and we're putting their mental health front and center. Their studies are front and center. I really love hearing your stories about how things have evolved.
Yeah, and then, I of course, I did a few more years of training, so I guess I can say once I finished all that training, I've watched concussion treatment, evaluation treatment, prevention evolve. And I can honestly say that I've worked at the professional level, collegiate level, youth level, Olympic level athletes, and I have never felt the pressure in the last literally decade or more from coaching staff to try to push someone back out there when I feel like they don't need to be going. In fact, it's just been a great relationship with coaches. I think sometimes parents might even wonder, well, he just hit his head, we hit our heads, and I don't want to downplay the parents' concern or the parents' desire to get their student back on the field. But I think we all need to work together on this. And I think if we all have the same vision of the health and safety of the athlete, I tell my students that I see with concussion, your brain has to last you the rest of your life. We don't know what your athletic career will turn out to be. You may go all the way to the professional level, or you may retire, as I call it, earlier than that. But that brain has to last you. So we don't pride ourselves here at KU at how fast they get back out on the field with concussion. We don't pride ourselves. We take pride in the fact that we want their brain 100% before they go back to anything that they want to do.
Rita has a concern, and I'm going to jump right in there with her. She said her son wants to play tackle football. He's only 10, so all of us parents that have young kids that are going to start wanting to get into sports, is there a recommended age to start for tackle football?
There has been that debate for years as to, is there a good age? Should we not do tackle football till they're, teenagers? Should we do flag football? We don't have good research data to say that they shouldn't start at that age, at 10. But what we do know is that they need to be in a very good youth program where that coach and the administrative staff running the program take the health and safety of that youth, that young person, very seriously, and teach them proper tackling techniques and training techniques and growing up conditioning techniques. And I think that it's hard to individualize that. There may be a 10-year-old that is ready for it, and we got to think about their emotional status, their confidence level, things like that. Because sport, we always go back to sport. It can be very, very, very good for a young person. It can build all kinds of discipline, conditioning, camaraderie with teammates. And so we don't want to say that the risk of sport should keep them out, but they do have to pay attention. And there's some parents that just don't want their children doing something like that. But remember what I just said, it could be a cheerleader. I've had almost every athlete from track and field, not bowling yet. I haven't had a bowling concussion, but I can tell you all kinds of different athletes. And in PE class, I'm seeing them in the office where they're playing team sports or doing a drill in PE class, and they hit their heads. So what do? Stop PE class?
Right.
Don't let them walk out in the parking lot in case they trip and fall. Obviously, driving, you get in. I had an athlete that then was in a bad car accident with a concussion from the car accident. I was treating the athlete for something else. So it's an awareness of how important it is to have youth sports be a safe environment. And that's what Miles just said, and I would agree. I was on that sideline last weekend. And shout out to you, Will. Will learned a lot about concussion management by going through this. Is that right, Will?
Yes, sir.
He did a great job. He's a very intelligent young man. His brain's going to take him a lot of places.
That's nice to hear from Dr. Smith, I have to tell you, Will. Okay, so I have a question, and Miles, maybe this is for you or Doug, but and you may have mentioned it, is Sway something that a parent can use or have access to or use at home?
No, it's not.
Okay.
We have a contract with the provider, and we are trained to go through and be able to set up and evaluate and assess. And so it's not something a parent can use at home. You have to reach out to one of us in the health system.
Okay. You know what you're doing. I like that. Okay, I have one last question, and it's for Dr. Hawkinson. John was questioning about the Pfizer launching trials of the flu and COVID-19 combo vaccine. Where are we with that? And my question is, how helpful will that be to get just people vaccinated in general?
Yeah, I mean, where are we with that? So they just announced it. So it is very early stages. Hopefully this will be very positive. They're combining these two vaccines and these two diseases, influenza and COVID-19. So very early stages as far as the trial is going. I think they just injected their first dose into a patient last week. So they are enrolling. Hopefully we will get good information, and hopefully it will show to be efficacious. Their early studies, I think, have shown it to be safe. No signal data of safety issues. So, but it's very early in that trial. So we're hoping that we will see some good data for protection against hospitalization, severe disease for that. Maybe even a little bit added protection against infection. We just don't know. I think overall this is going to be one more good thing to do for vaccination. We know that there are other vaccines that have several components in them. I think there's a pediatric vaccine that has at least 4 different components. So this is not a new thing for them to be able to combine vaccines. But anything we can do to combine these things so it's easier for the consumer, for the patient to go and get protected against as many infections as possible is always going to be a good thing.
All right, Doc Hawk, thanks so much. We're going to wrap up today, and I want to get some final thoughts from our guests. And I want to start with Miles, Doug, and Will. Miles, I'll start with you. We'll just head on down the line.
Sway has been just a valuable tool, so I'm thankful that we were able to reach out and get this implemented. I think it's got great potential, and we're just getting started. So I look forward to seeing how this is going to really help and impact us as athletic trainers on the sideline for years to come.
So as a student, I find Sway to be just extremely convenient. I don't have to go into the doctor's office basically every week just to do a test. I can just do it in my room, just in a dark environment. Miles will shoot me a text with a code, and then I just get it done. And I just found it really convenient, and I think it's just it makes the whole what's it called? It makes the whole process go a lot smoother.
Yeah, it's just simple.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so from my standpoint, it's, we looked at this product and we felt like it would enhance the safety and the health care of our student athletes. And that's what we do at the University of Kansas Health System in the Youth Sports Medicine program. We continually look for what's the next thing that we're going to do to take care of Will if he gets hurt, to give some peace of mind to moms and dads and what have you. And so we're always striving to get to that next level.
Guys, thank you so much. And thank you to all the trainers and Doug and your whole team who helps keep our student athletes safe and playing the sports that they love, but again, putting their health first. Dr. Smith, I want to get to your final thoughts, but Isaac has a really good question, so I have to sneak it in because I'm kind of wondering the same thing. That common perception that people who have a concussion can't fall asleep because they'll go into some sort of coma or it might cause major farther damage. He goes, is that reality?
No.
Okay.
No, the old days we used to say wake up someone every 2 hours and see how they're doing. Now
Okay.
we say sleep is important, and that's interesting how it ties into our first conversation earlier this morning, how important sleep is.
Yeah.
That is one of the treatments of concussion is a sleep clock. Get them good sleep hygiene. And good nutrition, good hydration, that's all part of concussion care. So no, they're not going to, and obviously if I see someone on the sideline that is going into what we call a neurologic decline, I'm seeing them get worse in front of my eyes, that's off to the emergency department.
Yeah, you're not going to tell them to take a nap.
And typically that's not a concussion, that's a brain bleed or something else
Right.
that has happened that is far more serious, which fortunately doesn't happen hardly at all.
What are some other final thoughts for us on this Friday?
So I'm going to step back and look at a little more at the forest, not just the Sway test. Obviously, Sway is an excellent component of our care, but a shout out to our KU Health System concussion team. It's a multidisciplinary team led by an outstanding sports neurologist, Dr. Mike Rippey, and we have research coordinators and research specialists and neuropsychologists and vestibular therapists, and I mean, we are very fortunate. I'm just a small part of that, but thank goodness our youth sports medicine has access to that, and it's not just the contracted schools that we work with, but any school in the metro area. And I've taken care of student athletes from out in the state of Kansas that come to us or down in Missouri. We're here as a resource too. For the state of Kansas especially. If there's anybody out there that needs our assistance, obviously contact us. Like I said, Dr. Rippey is our medical director, and we have resources to really help them out.
Fantastic. You guys are top notch. We appreciate you all very, very much. Dr. Hawkinson, final thoughts today.
Yeah, I mean, again, we know these cases of RSV influenza are going up. COVID is steady, but still really way too many people in the hospital. I think there's a lot of good information, good data, good science going on about protection, vaccinations, and even maybe some other preventive measures like monoclonal antibody, both for influenza and RSV, with the RSV being the monoclonal antibody, but of course the protection with the vaccines, as we've heard the questions about today. So lots of good, interesting things coming up, and we'll be sure to keep you, the viewers, updated on all the latest findings.
Great. Dr. Hawkinson, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. And thank you for being with us here today. You can catch our updates anytime by logging back onto Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Have a great weekend. Don't forget to change your clocks back on Sunday, and we'll see you here Monday at 8. Coming up Monday on the Morning Medical Update. His care team took him from a devastating stage 4 stomach cancer diagnosis to helping this young dad get back to living life with cancer. I'm Jessica Lovell. Coming up on the next Morning Medical Update, you'll meet the man doctors call a miracle and the new treatment helping others facing the same diagnosis.
Subscribe to our Morning Medical Update and Open Mics with Dr. Stites podcast. Now, everywhere podcasts are available.